Hey guys! So I was requested to do an updated eyebrow tutorial, which I will go into shortly, but first I wanted to go into the products that I use to shape my eyebrows and the products that I use to fill them in. So first of all I do for my eyebrows is I tweeze and trim them down with scissors. That's all I do to shape my eyebrows. And I have the shape that I pretty much had for a couple of years now and that I'm satisfied with. And I would recommend when you're starting out with your brows or you just want to start over, I'd recommend getting them professionally shaped the first time so you can figure out the best look for your face shape and for your eye shape and all that, and you'll see what best works for you. So get them professionally done, and I don't mean going to a nail salon and having them wax your brows. I mean like actually going to a brow professional if you can afford it. So like you can go into Ulta where they have the brow set up and get your brows shaped, or you can go into one of those salons that are specifically for brows. But try to get your brows professionally done the first time, and then from there on all your maintenance you can do it yourself to save money. But another way you can do it is to get brow stencils when you're starting out, not when you are comfortable with your shape already. But brow stencils, these are from Anastasia, but they give you different brow shapes and sizes, and you can use this as like a guide, and they're cheaper versions too. You can find them at the drugstore, at Ulta and those places, but they help to give you a guideline of an eyebrow shape, and you can use this, play with them, and figure out which brow shape looks best on you and go from there. So these are good guidelines. These are fun. But once you have your shape down, I recommend, my first recommendation is threading. Threading is, I guess, the less invasive method to shape and maintain your brows, and it's quick. It's a little bit painful. I find it painful, so I don't do it. But if my brows were okay with getting threaded, I would do it. But my brows are really thick and like really deep in my skin, and they're kind of hard to pull out with the thread, so I have to tweeze. So that's the next alternative, is to tweeze. I think tweezing is one of the better options to use. And then of course there's handy dandy shaving. I do not recommend waxing, because what waxing does is it takes a layer of your skin off. You may think it's not, but it's taking a layer of your skin off, and that dermis is being weakened by each time you wax, and it leads to premature aging and wrinkling and all that stuff, and I'm sure you don't want that. So that's the last resort. I wouldn't recommend waxing. Just don't. Tweeze, thread, shave if you have to. I do a little bit of tweezing and a little bit of shaving, and I'll show you what I use. For tweezing, I use my Tweezerman slanted pointed tweezers, and these are really great because the tip is really pointed and it really grabs really thin hairs. And I also use my Anastasia tweezers, which is great for grabbing onto thick, deep hairs. So I use those two for different reasons. And then when I trim my brows, because sometimes your eyebrows the hairs get too long and you need to trim them, I use my Tweezerman small brow shaping scissors. And for shaving, I use a straight blade razor. These are barber style razors, and I wouldn't recommend these for beginners because they can be a little dangerous, so be careful. So maybe you want to get one of these razors. Did I say tweezers? Razor. I didn't say razor because I know I said tweezer. Razor. Straight edge, straight blade razor. This one you find in, you'll find these in beauty supply stores. They're just little razors, and you can use these instead of this. This won't cut you as easily as this will. I've been cut many a time with this, but now I'm okay with it. So I recommend this for pros, or use at your own risk. But I use this to shape the brow, get me a really sharp line. on my brow. So, and also to remove like extra hair that has grown down from my hairline because I'm hairy, and yeah, so I do that. And then for my actual tools that I use to fill in my brows, I use my brow pencils from MAC, and I have Spiked and Stud, and Spiked is a lighter color. Which one is Spiked? Spiked is a lighter color for more natural brow, and Stud is deeper and darker. So yeah, those are the ones I use. They're twist up brow pencils like that. And you can use any brow pencil you're comfortable with, but I recommend using a brow pencil that's specifically for brows, because that will have a drier texture and it won't be runny like something that may be meant for eyeliner. So a drier texture will work, so there's more control and there's not like product everywhere sliding all over the place. For my brush, I use my eye definer brush from Paula Dorf. This is just a flat top brush. You can use an angled brush if you're more comfortable with that. They have one from Anastasia. I'll show you right now. Doesn't look that fancy. Yeah, that's an angled brush. So you can use whatever you're more comfortable with. And for cleaning up my brows, I use my MAC Pro Longwear Concealer, and this is the Longwear Concealer. It's waterproof and oil free, so it won't crease and smear and smudge and stuff. And with that concealer, I use Max Coverage Concealer Brush from Bare Essentials, and it's just a really defined concealer brush. For the actual brow powder, I will use my Brow Powder Duo from Anastasia. This is in Ebony, and it's a two-sided brow product, which I really like because I have this darker shade and I have this lighter one, and I can mix both of them to get either a really, I can go for a really dark brow or I can go for a lighter brow. So, and I can use varying intensities to get like a gradient effect to my eyebrows with this. So that's it. Those are the things I use. If you have any questions, feel free to post them below. I'll answer them as best as I can. And thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the actual brow tutorial, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Okay guys, so I already have one eyebrow filled in, and I'm going to do the other side for you guys. I have pretty much the shape that I want my eyebrow to be in. I've had this shape for a while now, and all I have to do is define it a little bit more and fill in the sparse spots. So my favorite pencil to use is the MAC Brow Pencil, and this one is in Spiked, which I use for more subtle, like a more subtle brow, and then I'll use Stud for a darker, more defined brow. Now I'm just gonna go ahead, and what I do is outline the bottom of the brow, so right where I want the shape to be, and I'm just using light feathery strokes, and I'm pretty much drawing a line with the pencil and outlining just the bottom of the brow where I want the most definition. So I'm filling in any areas that look a little sparse, and any because I'm adding somewhat more fullness to my brow because it's a little bit thin, so I'm adding fullness with the pencil. And I'm outlining the bottom rather than the top, because the top, when you don't outline the top, it gives a more natural look. So I'm following the shape that I want with the pencil, again going a little thicker than my natural brow, just drawing a line. Then I'm going to follow that and extend the tip of my brow, because the tip doesn't quite grow in as much as I would like. So I'm extending that, again just doing light lines, kind of not feathery strokes, but like gentle lines through my brow. So that's what we'll have, and I'm gonna go ahead now and also fill in the top from the arch. Now I'm doing feathery strokes for the arch, fill in the arch where it's a little sparse, and pulling it downwards to the tail of the brow. And that's all I'm gonna fill in with the actual pencil. Now I'm gonna go in with a flat brush, flat top brush, and this is the Paula Dorf Eye Definer brush, and it's just a flat top brush. You can use an angled brush if you're more comfortable, whatever brush you want, but what I need this to be is, I need it to be a little bit stiff, but not overly stiff, and then I need it to be thin, but still have some volume to it. So I don't really need a micro thin brush tip. I need it to be a little bit fluffy so I can help blend out the line, but tight enough that I can still get a defined line, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to go in with this brush and I'm going to blend out the line, just going back and forth. Well, not really back and forth, but I'm doing kind of short strokes along the line that I drew with the pencil, and fade in the pencil line a little bit so it doesn't look as harsh and stark. And while I'm doing that, I'm also kind of pulling up the color in the middle of my brow and at the top of my brow, like that. Then I'm going in with my brow powder, and then this is the Anastasia Powder Duo in Ebony, and it has two colors in it. This is, I think, the darkest shade they have. And what I do is I go back and forth to the darker and the lighter. I don't want just the dark shade, I want the lighter one as well. And then now I'm going to use this at the top of my brow with the brush to just give a more natural look to the top of my brow. So I'm not defining the top with a pencil, instead I'm using powder, which gives a more natural finish. Then I'm going to just wipe off that brush a little bit to get rid of the excess product. Then I'm going to just fade the color towards the beginning of my brow, like that, so it's a fade rather than a harsh line. Now the funny thing is about my brows, this side always looks a little bit more filled in than this one, just because the hairs on this side is actually thicker. Well, the hairs are actually thicker on this side, so they're more filled in by themselves naturally. So I step back and I look at both brows to make sure that they look not identical but similar, and then I'll pick up a little bit of just the dark side of the duo and fill in like the arch area just to make it a little bit darker and look closer to the other side, to the other brow. So now they look a little bit more similar and just as dark. So those are my finished brows, and I'll go in and show you how I define and clean up around the brow. So now that I have my brows filled in the way that I want them, I'm gonna go in and do a little cleaning up, add a little bit more definition with some concealer. And for this, I'm gonna use my MAC Pro Longwear Concealer, and this is in NW35, which is a lighter shade than my skin tone, and it's also cool, which means it's pink based, which will help to kind of add a highlight as well as kind of combat a little bit of darkness under my brow. So I got that on just a palette, just a drop, and I'm using my Max Coverage Concealer brush from Bare Essentials. And it's just a concealer brush of sorts, and I'm gonna pick that concealer up on the brush, and this brush has a very defined shape, so it's gonna do exactly what I need it to do, which is line under the brow and add extreme definition. So just lining under the brow with this, and it's wise to use some primer if you're prone to oily lids and creasing, because that will help to make the concealer much more long lasting. Although for this concealer it's a Pro Longwear, which means it's waterproof and it's a longwear concealer, so it really doesn't need any primer to make it last all day. But just in case you have really oily lids, you may want to go ahead and add a little primer first. And after that, I'm just going to take my finger and blend out the edge of the concealer, especially at the start of the brow where I want it to look really natural and just like my regular brow, although we all know it isn't. So that's pretty much how I define my brow, and I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!